And now, a three-time sports editor, former online and managing editor, and host of Talk That Talk, award-winning journalist Terrell Chatterbox Emerson.
Welcome to it. Welcome to it. It is 4 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, so you guys know what time it is. It is time for the Monday edition of the Talk That Talk radio show. I am your host, Terrell Chatterbox Emerson. I'm in studio dolo. I don't even know if you guys can see the camera. Let's go ahead and flip the camera around a little bit. We dolo in the studio today. It's just me. It is episode 12 of season 7. Overall, episode number 338 of the OD podcast. But yeah, man, we can get right to it. I do have a tip in from my mom. I don't believe my dad sent me anything today, but we got a lot of basketball talk today. I'm gonna go ahead and do my best Jim Rome impression. I know my dad usually likens my solo shows to Jim Rome, but just in terms of the energy. But we'll see how much you guys get out of me today. I'm excited. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm excited. It was a busy weekend. Hopefully everybody had a great weekend. But we got Running Rebel basketball to talk about. We got the Lady Rebels to talk about. We got some NBA All-Star action to talk about. And then, of course, we'll finish up with the Four Nations face-off here in the National Hockey League. But let's start with my mom's tip in. We'll get to socials. We'll get to all the specifics in a second. But my mom's tip in today is a quote from Malcolm X. I like this one a lot for a couple different reasons, but every defeat, every heartbreak, every loss contains its own seed, its own lesson on how to improve your performance the next time. I'll read that one more time. Every defeat, every heartbreak, every loss contains its own seed, its own lesson on how to improve your performance the next time. I don't have too many losses to talk about in terms of the Lady Rebels or the Running Rebels this particular episode, but I feel like that's a good jumping point for us to start from, right, in terms of today's show. But before we do that, let's get to our socials. Let's get to all the platforms you guys can catch us on. I was talking about the cameras a second ago. I was showing you guys what the studio looked like. Again, if you guys would like to kind of follow along and watch our live shows or watch our live episodes every Monday, 3 to 5, typically 3 to 5, right? And then on Thursdays, 10 p.m. to midnight, you guys can always catch us on our YouTube channel. It is Talk That Talk radio show. Once again, go to YouTube, go to the search bar, type in Talk That Talk radio show. The same applies pretty much across every platform, guys. It would be the same on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, rather. It'd be the same on Spotify, Facebook, Instagram. The one thing that would be different is our Twitter. Our Twitter is at Talk That Talk LV. Once again, guys, our Twitter is at Talk That Talk LV. But yeah, man, let's get right to it. We do have a lot of basketball to discuss today. We'll start with the Running Rebels. The Running Rebels are now up to 3 wins in the Mountain West. They won by the slimmest of margins, most recently a 52-51 victory against Fresno State on the road at Save Mart Center. I told you guys after the way that their first meeting went on December 28th, I was unsure of what this team was going to look like when it went up to Northern California. And if you guys followed the game, you guys already know how it went. Even with this victory, it wasn't the smoothest of victories for UNLV. In fact, it went without a point for 7 minutes and 25 seconds late in that regulation win. It ultimately won, as I said before, 52-51. Fresno State ended up missing the game winner. There's a couple different things I want to just briefly mention about this. UNLV missed more free throws at the end of the game. Junior guard Jaden Henley got an offensive rebound, a key offensive rebound, right? It ends up being the game winner. Gets a key offensive rebound, gets the putback, gets fouled on the putback, right? So he gets fouled in an and one situation. He goes to the free throw line and he misses one. With the team up one with 9.1 seconds to go, De'Don Thomas Jr. is at the free throw line. And I've documented it over the last couple of seasons for him, right? And he clanks the first one. And that ultimately leads to Fresno State not taking the timeout, but ultimately missing their game winner attempt. And UNLV very well could have lost this game. Bottom line. There's no way to sugarcoat it. And it goes back to what I said earlier this season, right? About me not being sure whether I'm watching a good team or a bad team. I got my answer relatively early in conference play. The good teams, as much as I would like to say the good teams don't have games like this, the good teams do, but a couple of things about them. A, they don't happen as frequently. And B, they don't necessarily happen against teams like this. So what do I mean when I say teams like this? Well, we're talking about Fresno State, right? And keep in mind, guys, we've talked all year long, kind of ad nauseum, about how underwhelming this Mountain West is. And UNLV just beat a Fresno State team by a point on the road. A Fresno State team that is absolutely in a downswing. We talked about it earlier this year. They've now lost 8 straight games. They're 5-21 on the year and 1-14 in the Mountain West. And UNLV just beat them by a point. Keep in mind, UNLV is 6th in this underwhelming Mountain West. They sit at 14-12 on the year and 8-7 in the conference. They're a half game up on UNR. They're a game and a half back of Boise State. Tournament starts today. UNLV plays Air Force, an Air Force team that's 3-21 and 0-14 in conference play. I don't know what you guys want me to say. Truthfully, don't. There has got to be I don't want to say come to Jesus moment because I feel like we hear it a lot. I've obviously mentioned it a lot in terms of what Asia said a couple of years ago for the Aces, but there has to be a reality check moment, I think, for this program, right? And I was speaking with Lindy LaRock, who we're about to get to in a second, this past weekend, and I talked to them after the win against UNR. Spoiler alert, guys, if you guys came for that. But we have 5 games left for the men's team. 3 of the 5 are at home. Matter of fact, I know I have the next game, but I want to see if I can pull up all of the games for the men's team. So the men's team will end the season with the home game against Colorado State, a road game against San Jose State, a home game against UNR, and then in the month of March, you close the year by hosting San Diego State and then heading to the Pit. And keep in mind, I just mentioned a second ago that your next game is against Colorado State, albeit at home. When you went to Colorado State, UNLV lost by 22. Some may say the writing is on the wall in terms of what this team has done this year. Obviously, it dealt with some injuries, right? Still dealing with some injuries. There's still something to be said about this team, because same thing that happened last year, right? It wasn't around. Was it around this time? I feel like they might have made the move a little bit earlier, but UNLV, let's just say UNLV was to shock the world and was to shock the college basketball world and win 5 more games to end the season. That would run their win streak to 8 games. Let's say that they're a top 3. Honestly, the fact that this team is competing for a top 5 seed, which would give them the bye week, or which would give them the bye heading into the start of the tournament. For UNLV to do that this year and have one of the runs that they had last year, it has to start now. So from that standpoint, is it going to start now? So let's switch gears a little bit. And the Lady Rebels are in a much different position than the Running Rebels. The Lady Rebels are currently leading the Mountain West. Once again, they are currently 2.5 games up on Colorado State as well as Wyoming. The team currently sports a 21-5 overall record with a 13-1 mark in conference play. That 13-1 mark was just highlighted with a 14-point win over the in-state rival UNR. It was a 64-50 win. Shout out to the Alexander family really quick, because Aaliyah Alexander carried the team on offense, 18 points on the same floor that her older sister. And I'm going to give a round of applause right now to a Wolfpack member, and that typically doesn't happen on the show. But shout out to Aaliyah Alexander for scoring 18 points on the same floor that her sister played for the Wolfpack. Nia, I actually talked to Lindy about that, and Lindy is, as much as I'm big on stats and things like that, right? Lindy is big on storyline. So I asked her about that storyline, and that was one of the things that she kind of brought up, and she was like, hey, we talked about it going in, and we understand that, you know, we're not home, but we still have a significant tie here with the Alexander name. And obviously, Aaliyah goes in there and she scores that 18 points as part of a winning effort for Lindy LaRock and her group. But also it's a part of a concerted effort that the team has kind of been on for the past couple of weeks, right? And that's been getting Kiera Jackson to 3rd all-time on the program's assist list. And it finally happened. She passed Mia Bell. She needed 1 assist to tie Mia Bell in the game and 2 to pass her. She did both in the first quarter. Shout out to KJ. Let me go ahead and just highlight this really quick, because KJ did mention that while catching Mia on the all-time assist list is cool and all, she wants the top spot for most assists in the game, which is actually held by Mia Bell as well for 14. I had an opportunity to talk to Mia Bell last week, and she was very open and honest and kind of saying, hey, this is, first of all, records are meant to be broken. And one of the things that I thought that she said that was most poignant for me was not very many people get to set records and then watch them be broken as well. And she said has one of the closest seats in the house to do so, obviously from her assistant coach's chair. And the amount of grace that Mia handled that with, I don't want to say handled that with, because it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But the amount of grace that Mia showed the situation as a whole. In fact, she was saying that that day that I was talking to her, she thought she would get it that day, which is why KJ came into the UNR game 2 assists shy of passing Mia Bell. When I asked Lindy about it, Lindy, again, big on storyline, was saying, well, now she's 3. Let's see if she can get to 2. That's the goal now. Let's see if she can keep kind of up in the bar and see what's next for her senior. Regardless of what's next for her senior in terms of her senior point guard, this group as a whole is gelling right at the right time, right? We was talking about the men's side a second ago, and when they went on their run last year, UNLV appears to be in the middle of one right now, right? They've reeled off 5 straight wins since that lone conference loss to San Diego State, which they've avenged in the midst of this 5-game win streak. Again, that's a big reason why they're first in the Mountain West, 21-5 overall, with a 13-1 conference mark. But of those 5 losses, 4 of them are on the road. And I've spoken to Lindy about it before, and Lindy is really adamant about mentioning the environments that they've played in, right? They've gone to Baylor, they've gone to DePaul, they've gone to Northwestern, they've gone to Arizona. Just some tough places to play, right? Some very, very tough places to play. And UNLV has been there this year. So they have a 7-4 mark on the road, and now they're headed back to the road in a big-time conference game against Colorado State. As I mentioned before, they're currently two and a half games up on the Rams. But on Saturday, February 22nd, 12 p.m., we will see if UNLV can get a much-needed win over Colorado State. That would ultimately give them the regular season series sweep over their Mountain West foe. And as far as the men's game is, as I mentioned before, at home against Colorado State, but it is the same night, February 22nd, 7 p.m., and UNLV is hoping to avenge a 22-point loss in that one. Just a good time to mention, too, really quick, guys. I'm looking at our YouTube, and I'm looking at the chat. If you guys have questions for us, or for myself, rather, if you guys have questions, please send them in to today. Today would be a great day to do so. Maybe you guys can kind of dictate how the conversation goes, because for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm supposed to discuss NBA All-Star Weekend. And there's a lot that you guys can go ahead and fill in and let me know if you guys want to hear a little bit more on a particular topic or a little bit less on a particular topic. Just go ahead and let me know. Again, this is your Monday installment, your Monday edition of the Talk That Talk radio show, a special 1-hour episode on this President's Day. I began at 4 p.m. We're wrapping up about 5. But yeah, guys, there's obviously so much to get to, excuse me, in the coming weeks in terms of college basketball. I don't know what the hell just happened right now, but again, if you guys have questions, whether it's about anything that's on the topic or anything that's on the topic list tonight or today, rather, we have the Running Rebels, we have the Lady Rebels, which we both just wrapped up right now. We do have NBA All-Star Weekend, a conversation about that headed your way. As a matter of fact, Thursday, I'm working on something a little special for you guys, just in terms of a special guest, try to get you guys a conversation about the NBA, kind of coming off the heels of All-Star Weekend, right? Which we're about to discuss in a quick second. And then we'll wrap up the show with the Four Nations face-off, of course, being held by the National Hockey League. But again, guys, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. As far as NBA All-Star Weekend, there was one quote that came out today. KD tweeted, and I'm gonna paraphrase it, right? But essentially, he was saying, since everybody is so miserable around this time of year and everybody has nothing but complaints for All-Star Weekend, how about we cancel it? Cancel it for a little bit, make people miss it. And to be honest, that's just a business owner's mind. I don't think the NBA does it, right? But from KD's perspective, we're attempting to give it our all. You can't speak for everybody, right? But we're attempting to give it our all every single night throughout the regular season. We work hard enough. We bust our ass to where we're recognized as all-stars. And even us going out here and still trying to perform for you guys, yes, I'm one of those as well that says, hey, we need more competition in the NBA All-Star Game, which we'll get to in a second. But we're going out there and we're still performing for you guys. I mean, you hear people like Domantas Sabonis, right? And you hear all of these other different guys who don't make the All-Star team throughout the years, and they'll tell you, hey, I'm not too worried about it. I'll go ahead and go on vacation, right? So Kevin Durant's vantage point is we're playing basketball at a time when we don't really have to. Of course, we're appreciative to be all-stars, but it's being met with nothing but negativity and people being condescending. So there is a little bit of KD being condescending in there as well, especially because I don't believe the NBA would do it. But it is worth mentioning from an athlete's perspective. Let's get to the weekend itself. And I don't think I've said this yet. Let me go ahead and pause everything for a quick second. This show is being shot from the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park here on Sunset, here in Las Vegas, Nevada. That's a huge thing that I have to mention during these episodes. This studio, you guys already see it. We'll circle back through the cameras really quick, but you guys kind of see the beautiful studio that they've given us here at the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park here on Sunset in Las Vegas, Nevada. But back to All-Star Weekend. First of all, kudos to the Rising Stars Challenge. I know people think, well, especially because of the way that the weekend plays out, right? Friday night, a lot of people don't really care about what happens Friday night. However, for me, and probably a lot of basketball fans, if you guys follow the All-Star festivities from year to year, a lot of times that's where you're going to see the competitive ball. Friday night, you have these young guys, and I heard somebody mention it not too long ago. These guys are obviously getting their first taste of NBA All-Star Weekend, right? However, some of those guys won't be back after the Rising Star Challenge 1 or 2 times. That said, you usually get guys that go out there and go all out. I've liked the addition of the 4 teams, breaking it up. I have liked that. I like the element this year of obviously playing to the host city, but you have the teams coached by TMC. Obviously, if you guys know a little bit about basketball, just in terms of the history, especially the rich history in the Bay Area, and of course of the Warriors, run TMC with Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, and Chris Mullin, a former Pacer, by the way. I'm gonna just highlight that and throw that out there. It's important to see those legends be identified and recognized, right? We saw Jerry Rice against Barry Bonds in terms of coaching the celebrity game. So they definitely kept it real Bay Area, which was a beautiful thing to see, obviously, right? We've had, and this is no shot at these cities, but we've seen different cities show out in different ways. And obviously we've had a couple of All-Star games in recent memory in Cleveland, Indianapolis, and Utah. And those are not necessarily the bigger name cities, right? And they still went out there and were able to kind of do something and do something big for the NBA. I know Indianapolis sticks out to me for a couple of different reasons, but this year felt really Bay Area. All the social media clips that I see about all the festivities and the events and the outings, everything felt Bay Area. So I'm really, really happy for those that were able to go ahead and kind of feel that nostalgia, especially having a couple of events at Oracle Arena. So as far as the Rising Stars Challenge, round of applause for Leonard Miller, formerly of the G League Ignite, now of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Guys that are there for the second year usually get it, right? They usually get it, and it forces them to be more aggressive. I remember last year when we talked about the NBA All-Star game, especially during the Rising Stars, or All-Star Weekend, especially during the Rising Stars portion of it. Guys went at the G League guys extremely hard, and they made sure that they had a welcome to the NBA moment during All-Star Weekend. Leonard Miller came out this particular time around and didn't look like he was going to let that happen, right? And Bryce McGowan's as well hits a huge three. You saw his coach, the G League coach, Jeremy Lin, kind of go crazy on the bench, talk about how big of a shot it was. It gave them a 1-point victory in the first semifinal game, which sent the G League to the championship game where they met Team C. And again, being a hoop fan, I love the fact that somebody like a Keontae George was able to show what he's made of, right, on one of the biggest stages during the season. And of course, that's somebody who plays in Utah. And the Jazz, let's talk about it, the Jazz stink. So for whatever it's worth, seeing Keontae George go out there and make some big time plays and obviously be a part of a winning effort for Team C was really, really dope to see. I don't know how many people would have known Keontae George if they were just watching the regular season. Not somebody that gets talked about enough, but somebody that hoop fans understand can go out there and definitely burn on the floor. Skills challenge. First of all, can I just say that I like Wemby's approach to everything All-Star so far? You know what's really interesting, and I just thought about it? Giannis said the same thing that Wemby said, Victor Wembanyama said a while back, and he said it in a couple different variations, but he addressed not necessarily, I think it was working out during the summer, and he kind of addressed that, and he was like, I'm not necessarily trying to make friends. I'm not trying to go at you guys. It's not necessarily what we're trying to do. I'm not trying to work on my game with you guys. We'll figure it out. Wemby's approach to All-Star Weekend is refreshingly the same way. Not here to make friends. I think he said that verbatim. Not here to make friends. I'm here to sustain what we're building. I'm here to build good habits. I'm here to win. And the funny thing is, when he talked this past weekend, it reminded me a little bit about what's been circulating over the past couple of years in terms of All-Star games, and it was what Kobe has said, right? There's this cycle in NBA All-Star circles where, whether it's international play, whether it's All-Star play, whenever you get, and we've seen it in regular season play recently, the balance of trying to go all out and play 100% all the time, and you couple that with the serious injuries that we've seen players sustain in international play, All-Star games, or things of that nature. I know, ironically enough, no real serious injury comes to mind in terms of the All-Star game. I remember when Kobe got his nose broke by Dwayne Wade, and that was something, right? Aside from that, we don't really see it anywhere else. I'm going to use that to kind of springboard into, first of all, let me highlight this really quick too. I just mentioned that he reminded me of Giannis with the way that he was speaking. Cool. You want to know the problem that I have? We have this conversation about who the face of the league is, who the face of the league will be. And I've mentioned over the past couple of seasons, to me, it's become very, very clear, very, very evident. It's not going to be a face. It's going to be a bunch of flags stitched together. And that's where the NBA is headed. The NBA's best players, by a vast majority, will not be from the U.S. That's where the league is headed. I just mentioned two people who their mentality screams previous eras and decades of basketball, specifically in the NBA, and that's the competitiveness that some say is lacking in today's game. The two men that I just mentioned, one is a French man and one is a Greek man. And they're telling you guys to your face, not trying to be your friend. We can bond when our careers are over. Or when we're teammates, if we're teammates. And then you go out there, Wemby, with Chris Paul. And I'm going to be completely honest. This is why this portion of the show was kind of fun for me. I knew it would be fun for me because, yes, Wemby and Chris Paul got eliminated and disqualified specifically for essentially cheating the system, right? As much as most people will look at that situation like, oh, that's Chris Paul all the way. That's Chris Paul all the way. One of two things may be additional to that or in place of that. After hearing him speak the last year, I don't know that Wemby couldn't have come up with something like that. Second part of that, because I'm unsure if Wemby could come up with something like that, let's just say Chris Paul did. I don't think Wemby needed much convincing. Dog, I'm here to win. Do I get extra points for making it? No. I'm going to just fling this ball up in that direction. The goal is to finish the obstacle course the quickest, right? That's what we're looking to do. Wasn't too upset at that approach, even though it didn't work out in their favor. Shout out to Team Cavs, who won, Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. I will say this, though, in Chris Paul and Wemby's defense, all of those misses during the skills challenge, ooh, I know we've seen a couple different iterations of all of these different events over the past couple of years. I would like to get back to the solo ones. I'm not mad at bigs versus guards, however you want to do it. Bracket style, however you want to do it. We got to get back to penalizing guys for missing shots. That would eliminate what Wemby and Chris Paul tried to do immediately. However, keep in mind, too, a lot of people give suggestions for, and I don't want to seem like I'm one of those guys right now that give suggestions for the NBA All-Star game, but they don't acknowledge that it changed to begin with. At one point, people were tired of seeing exactly what I'm talking about in terms of just the point guards, the John Walls, the Patrick Beverleys of the world going out there and dominating in terms of the skills challenge, right? Then you've seen some big guys get at it in there. You saw Boogie. You think you saw Jokic at one point. You see all of these big guards. I think you might have saw Bam Adebayo actually win it. You see a lot of these big guys go out there, and now they're doing it, right? We'll get to it during the NBA All-Star game, but I think there's a couple of different methods that you could use. Ironically enough, somebody asked Giannis about it, and again, we'll get to it during the NBA All-Star section of it, but there's a good portion of the league, as I mentioned before, who's not from the U.S. Maybe that should be capitalized on. Miami's Tyler Hero wins the 3-point contest. He won that on Saturday night. Beat a field that included the likes of Norman Powell, Damian Lillard, and Jalen Brunson. Just to give you guys a little bit of an idea of some of the people that was actually competing. Buddy Hield competed as well. I'm just trying to think about some names just off the top. Jeez Louise. Cam Johnson was another one. I don't know. Am I just going to name everybody except for like two? But just to kind of give you guys an idea, I thought that this was a big time moment for Miami, right? We talk about seasons and stories and things of that nature kind of writing themselves. This, for me, I didn't have too many picks going into All-Star Weekend. I felt like the energy around All-Star Weekend was kind of down. I also think that the NBA should announce their participants earlier. I believe the NBA All-Star festivities didn't announce the 3-point contest participants until the week before, maybe. I think maybe when All-Star starters come out, we should start looking at dunk contest announcements, 3-point contest announcements. The reserve should probably be the last thing that we talk about. And in terms of All-Star Weekend. Everything else should be juiced. We should have all of February as our runway in terms of All-Star Weekend. I think that'll actually be a big improvement to the viewership and hopefully the excitement around it, right? Hopefully you're making guys a little bit more excited about it as well heading into All-Star Weekend. But considering what Miami has went through this season by losing Jimmy Butler, Pat Riley getting some do I say well-deserved? Pat Riley's getting some hate. You throw in whatever descriptor you need to, but he's been getting some hate, obviously, considering the way that the Jimmy Butler situation has panned out. Also, coupled with the fact that the team hasn't been playing the best ball this season. We talked about Tyler Hero being the captain now, right? Down in Miami. Bam Adebayo obviously has a big part in that as well in terms of keeping the franchise afloat. You're getting a proven winner in terms of Andrew Wiggins, a former number 1 overall pick, and Andrew Wiggins. Miami needed a shot in the arm. Still, I don't know that this was the shot in the arm, but it indeed was a shot in the arm. So Tyler Hero goes out. I kind of mentioned the names that he competed against in the 3-point contest. He goes out. He brings home the hardware. You saw Pat Riley's reaction from the stands. I don't think anybody was. And again, I could be off in this, but Pat Riley looks like he roots for his guys at all times, right? That fist pump after Tyler won looked a little bit different. Felt a little bit different. That was more than just a "that's my guy" type of fist pump. And this is where I was going with it before. Everybody told me that it's a principle thing with Pat Riley. And I said at a certain point, I said Pat Riley has to stop the measuring contest and realize what's important. Do you want to win that contest or do you want to win a different one? Because one thing that I don't know for sure, right? But one thing that I believe about that Miami locker room, Tyler Hero was ready to put that behind him. Bam Adebayo was ready to put that behind him. Jaime Jaquez was ready to put that behind him. Terry Rozier may have been indifferent, but he could have been ready to put that behind him. Let's just say the entire locker, Eric Spoelstra was ready to put it behind himself. So let's say everybody in that Miami locker room is ready to put that behind them and they're ready to be done with it. It appears that Pat Riley was the last one ready to be done with it. That was my dilemma with the situation. Are you more focused on being right or getting the situation done with? I think Miami will be a lot better off now that the trade is done, now that they've gotten a small injection in the arm during NBA All-Star Weekend in the form of a 3-point contest win for Tyler Hero. I think Tyler Hero comes out in the second half and he hoops immediately. Maybe he chucks a little, but I think it happens. Let me make sure my dad didn't text me a tip in. No, it looks like we're good. 2 more All-Star Weekend festivities to address really quick. Mac McClung, we got another 3-peat, guys, but it's not the typical 3-peat that you would expect. It's a 3-peat in terms of a dunk champion win for Mac McClung. Did it for Philly. Did it for the Osceola. Did I just say that right? Osceola, I believe. I'm over here trying to spell it in my head, but did it for the Magic as well in back-to-back years. All right. Let's just call a spade a spade. The dunk contest has gotten a lot of flack for a long time, right? Let's say at least the last 15 years. As basketball fans, I don't believe that we do enough of living in the moment and telling our beautiful game story. Everybody talks about Vince Carter in 2000, right? First of all, we had dunk contest issues before the Vince Carter as well. We only talk about the 2000s for whatever reason, but long live Bean. Go back and watch Kobe's dunk contest. Not even his performance. Go watch the rest. So 2000 happens, right? Vince Carter does what he does. By the way, everybody talks about Vince Carter in that dunk contest. Steve Francis had a lot of moments in that dunk contest. He had some misses as well, right? That dunk contest was better than just Vince Carter. You get past that. Does anybody remember Jason Richardson as a dunker? Because I do. Does anybody remember Desmond Mason as a dunker? Because I do. We could talk about Nate Robinson. We could talk about Dwight Howard if you want to. But I'm going to go back to something really quick. Let's go to 2011. Everybody's going to bring up Blake Griffin, right? Cool. If I recall correctly, if memory serves me correctly, DeMar DeRozan was in that dunk contest. JaVale McGee was in that dunk contest. And I believe Serge Ibaka was in that dunk contest. Go back and watch that dunk contest. Serge Ibaka grabbing a child's plush toy with his teeth from the rim. JaVale McGee dunking on 2 different courts. JaVale McGee bringing out an extended court. Let's go a little bit further. Ooh. What about Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon's? Got a couple of those, right? And now we're here at the Mac McClung. By the way, John Wall's dunk contest win was a free-for-all. But go back and look at John's makes. I say all of that to say there's plenty to complain about if you look for it. There's also plenty of things to talk about that's great. As I mentioned before, anytime I hear the dunk contest conversation, most people don't even know what the hell I'm talking about when I mention Desmond Mason. Because he probably wasn't the hooper that you guys wanted him to be in the league. All-time dunker. Let's just say I'm putting a little sauce on it in terms of saying all-time dunker, right? Cool. Is Jason Richardson an all-time dunker? What about Nate Robinson for his stature? What about the flair that Dwight Howard brought? I mentioned Blake Griffin for a reason, right? And this is why this year's dunk contest, sure. Let's talk about Mac's performance. Oh, I didn't even mention Victor Oladipo during one of those Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine years. To see Mac McClung pull out that car on the first dunk attempt, I said, oh. I said, okay. I said, this is probably going to be sad because everything else is probably going to be a step down from here. Not only did he do the dunk over the car first, it was better than Blake's. He jumped over the tallest part of the car, and it was better than Blake's. And then the dunking of the two balls. What else? What else am I missing? I'm missing the one from the baseline. What was it? Or did he run from the wing? Oh, but no, the hoverboard was the two ball, right? I know about the last one. Making the player to the freeze. To freeze in midair. And still finish that dunk. To tap the rim before completing the dunk on the final one. There is still creativity out there. You guys have to find it. And to be honest with you, too, I think this should go without saying. Mac's first two wins opened the door for Mac to be extremely, aside from comfortable, a lot more creative in what he was able to go out there and do. That Mac McClung performance is going to get lumped in as, the dunk contest hasn't been good since X. Hasn't been good since Y. It's these moments throughout basketball history where you go to it and you go, you know what? That was something. You know what dunk contest I think about? And I'm happy I just thought of this right now. 2005, Denver. If I recall correctly, Birdman didn't have the best performance. Shout out to Chris Anderson. But J.R. Smith, Amari Stoudemire, and Josh Smith put on a hell of a performance. Is Josh Smith one of those dunkers? I'm going to be honest. I'm a Pacer fan, right? Fred Jones got one in 2004. Just something to highlight. And then in terms of the All-Star game itself, Shaq's OGs went ahead and won that one. Shout out to Steph Curry for winning a second MVP at the All-Star game. I do think this new format of breaking up the teams, obviously the Rising Stars team, Team C, had an opportunity to compete on Sunday. Draymond Green came out and expressed his feelings towards it, and I couldn't imagine being somebody who worked as hard as these athletes work to be all-stars and then have to share the floor with somebody that wasn't voted in either by fans and or their peers. Probably lessens the significance of the award and or recognition. So I understand that and I get that, right? And I hear Draymond when he says that, and I actually hope that with a little bit more weight than a lot of other people would. But the one thing I don't like about this format is it's going to take away those. Now, yes, we saw, I think Jason Tatum go out there and score 65, right? We seen Paul George get to 50 and they didn't want him to break the record, or get to 49 and they didn't want him to break the record, right? So we saw those certain moments. However, this format for the All-Star game is going to take away those big MVP performances for us to kind of look at and go, well, this person had this game. I think the clear-cut MVP, or even just those MVP moments where it's like, it's back and forth, we're unsure of what we're going to get, I think it lessens the likelihood for that. Shout out to Wemby. I did see that video floating around of Wemby being upset after that backdoor bucket, which ultimately was the game winner. I'll let you guys have at that. It it was brought up obviously during the weekend, right? And people were asking about how can you save the NBA All-Star game? And the format of US versus the world was kind of tossed around and flirted around out there. And we've seen the Rising Stars Challenge do it. And it probably didn't garner as much attention as the NBA All-Star game would, obviously. But a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander versus a Steph Curry matchup, followed by an Anthony Edwards versus Luka Doncic matchup. We can keep going if you guys want to, but for me, just toying with that idea. Let's just say you want to go big. Let's say you go Giannis at the 3 for Team World, and you got Jason Tatum on the other side. Then you got LeBron and Jokic. Then you got Embiid for the World against who from the U.S.? Karl Anthony Towns. And he's not really from here either. That's the DR. So that's where we're at. I think that would garner A, probably some more attention, or B, or not even or B, the players will care more. We're about to talk about the Four Nations face-off in the NHL. That one sure feels a little different, doesn't it? I think the U.S. versus the world as a theme for All-Star Weekend should be a thing. If you have the U.S. versus the world in terms of dunk contest, three-point contest, Rising Stars Challenge, NBA All-Star Game, Skills Challenge, don't care. Ping pong, don't care. That's what I think should happen. Maybe that's the change to the NBA All-Star Weekend. Maybe we start doing themes like that. They mentioned Shaq's OGs, right? What about OGs versus the new era one year? I think US versus world is a better one. But now would be the time to create that list of evergreen themes and say, okay, OGs versus new era, US versus world. Let's see if I can figure out a third one beforehand. One just came to mind and it's inappropriate. But those are the different elements that I think I would kind of toy with, right? Formats don't necessarily seem to be the issue. Want to seems to be the issue. Now, Adam Silver can't make these decisions to go out there and want them for you guys. But he can do something to make it a little bit more enticing. And I think the ego is the only way this is going to work. You guys talk about money. These guys are NBA players that make more than they ever dreamed of. A lot of these guys. That's not going to help them. Oh, what if it's about car? That ain't going to help them. Being put on Front Street and possibly being shown up, not having the opportunity to have bragging rights, that might make these players play a little harder. Kevin Durant talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Hell, maybe we should just go back to West versus East. We should just stop that. Or maybe we shouldn't have stopped that. But we're going to end the show with the Four Nations face-off kind of preview for the championship game. I don't even want to say preview for the championship game, but just a mention of the championship game, right, which will take place on Thursday. The USA and Canada will rematch. The USA and Canada will have a rematch from Saturday's 3-1 victory for the Americans over the Canadians. A game that featured 3 fights in the first 9 seconds. And the reason why, I don't want to sit here and condone violence, right? I'm not that guy. But I do want to highlight that everything we just said about the NBA All-Star game, right, and the All-Star weekend as a whole, lacking that intensity, the Four Nations face-off hasn't been that, right? Especially with the U.S. and Canada. 3 fights in the first 9 seconds. I did like the Tkachuk tie-in in terms of their fathers. His fight with Lemieux. I don't know why I'm missing this. Why I'm blanking on the first name. This is terrible. Sorry, guys. His fight with Lemieux. And obviously tying that into Matthew and Brady's situation in terms of the 3 fights on Saturday. But if you want to just talk about what's happening on the ice, Dylan Larkin scored the go-ahead goal for the U.S. Ultimately, as I said before, it was a 2-goal victory for the U.S., a 3-1 victory. On Thursday, I am expecting to have Justin Russo in the building. We haven't had JT in the building for a little bit, but we will be coming off of that championship game, so we'll get a raw reaction from him, somebody who knows the Vegas Golden Knights well, somebody who knows Jack Eichel and Noah Hannafin and Bruce Cassidy and Mark Stone and all of these different guys who's going to be featured in that championship game on Thursday. He knows them probably some of the best than anybody here in the city, and he will be here on Thursday. I don't want to tell you guys my special guest, but I'm working on a conversation that will be able to be played during our Thursday episode. Again, that will be the 13th episode of season 7. That will take place on Thursday night. As I mentioned before, we have UNLV, the men's side and the women's side, back in action on Saturday. The men play at 7 from the campus of UNLV from the Thomas and Mack. The women will be headed to Colorado State, and that game is at 12 noon. So got a lot coming up for you guys, obviously, in a couple of different avenues. But today we only did an hour. It was a dolo show by me. I appreciate you guys again for being active in the chat. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you guys for running it back on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We will continue to work to bring you guys the best news that we know how to bring you guys. Busy weekend, as I mentioned this past weekend. Episode 68 of the OD podcast will be out on Wednesday. I think we actually called it Dugan Links. Don't ask. Actually, if you follow me on Instagram, you probably know why it's called Dugan Links. But episode 69 on the way of the of the OD podcast. This episode of the Talk That Talk radio show 338. We are getting ready to wrap up. Again, I thank you guys for continuing to make this a beautiful journey, and you guys have been there with us every step of the way. Until next time, guys, keep on talking.